we wrote something quite a few years ago now called we called a manifesto for a better government, which included a set of values and principles. I'll just read out the values because it sort of resonates with what you were saying. So the values we think are underplayed today and should be more celebrated and more cultivated in government are humility, openness, empathy, authenticity, trust, curiosity, and diversity. And that, I don't want to make a gendered comment necessarily, but look, those are the values which we think we need to see more of. And if you imagine the opposites of all of those things, then that's unfortunately what we see more of in our systems today, I believe.
Yeah, and I think it's important that it's not artificial elevation of people or a gender, and we're seeing a lot of those issues. And even from looking at my own podcast guests, I thought about it for a second because very male dominated. And I'm very organic with when I people reach out to me or I reach out to people. You could see that there's a lot more males that are putting their hand up to take on these positions and have these discussions, whereas you don't see it, which is something very interesting to me. Then also, when I put myself in the public spotlight, not intentionally, it just happened, I then realized why people shy away and don't put up their hand to take on a public role, or be in a position of influence or power or something like that. It's not a pleasant place to be. You get challenged by everyone, more than just challenged, disparaged by everyone on every side. So I think, kind of going back to my earlier question, is it that complicated? And that's why I focus so much on education, is trying to elevate the conversation so that we're not, at least disparaging people. Let's just start there maybe. And then more women will come out again, and not artificially, because I think that doesn't help the conversation at all either.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I guess some people can dismiss what I'm arguing for as very sort of wishful thinking, and it can never be achieved, and it's against human nature, or we're never going to be able to elevate this.
What would they be arguing though that wouldn't be able to be elevated?
Well, maybe they would say. Often people say, well, look, in the media climate we have, in the political climate that we have, which is very adversarial and very it is very quick to jump on any small error or any small mistake and really hound people as a result of it, which is partially the experience you're describing, right?
Yeah.
In that environment, why would anyone be humble enough to say, I don't think I know what the answer to that is, or let's take a more open approach where we bring a whole range of different views together, rather than saying, yep, here's the plan that's going to solve this problem.
Yeah.
So I do understand that but there are examples of a different way, right? Often those examples are at the local level, where communities and local governments and civil society and other actors can come together around in a locality and form relationships and different ways of working that perhaps are difficult at higher levels of the system. So I think we can look at often to localities and to other forms of organizing that show us what's possible. Here in Sweden, where I live, as we said at the beginning, there's actually a decades-long tradition in the summertime. This happened just a few weeks ago, of all the political parties and the media and representatives from business and the unions and everybody else coming together for what is effectively a festival of ideas and politics on an island in the Baltic Sea. And they all gather together. It's broadcast on TV. The sessions are all open to the public, and spend a week talking about what are the big issues, in whether that's in Swedish society or in the world. What do we think? Lots of views will be shared. Different views will be shared, and it's a space for exchange, dialogue, and mutual learning. It's not a space for arguing each other and shouting each other down, which is such a precious space in the modern world, right? And very hard space to come across, especially online. But it shows you that it's possible, right? Now, not everywhere's Sweden. I get that. Not, and there's a very specific culture here, but it shows you that it is possible to imagine a different way of approaching the challenges we face that is much more open, inclusive, and humble than many of the ways we approach it today.
So interesting. And I was going to ask you if you see examples. So I'd like to talk about that a bit more as well. But before we go there, it's interesting that you were saying, in this climate with the adversarial and you can't admit a mistake. To me, I think that's something we created as well. Like coming from a legal background, that's my job, is we're adversaries. But at the same time, you're collegial about it. It's not, there's other interests, and you have to recognize somebody else has a different interest, and somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose, and we move on. That is life. So it's very normal to me. Of course, I want to win, but it doesn't always happen. That isn't life. And then with mistakes, I just resonated with that so much because I think that's something elected officials allowed themselves to be elevated or put on a pedestal, that they're not going to have make a mistake and then they have to apologize for everything. I think that's so ridiculous and so silly, because what we started with is these are very complicated social issues, and we need to learn and we need to understand. If something isn't working, let's, change focus, change direction, and see maybe this will work. But instead, we've been suggesting or elevating these elected officials that the day before they were just a regular Canadian or a regular Swede. And then all of a sudden they have some power and they're supposed to have all the answers to everything. And I think that's just silly if you look at it. And I think that we just need to own that and not expect perfection from anyone, because that's not reality. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
I agree with that. I think part of it, though, is again coming back to the sort of paradigm within which we're operating. If we think that we have control, then I suppose it's fair enough to say, well, it hasn't worked out as we expected, so it's your fault because you were in charge. But that is all a myth. That was all a myth in the first place anyway. So so that's part of what is perpetuating this sense that, we need to hold these people to account when something is not achieved, which actually in holding them to account, we're also giving up our responsibility of being part of the same system, right? Because it's sort of convenient for us to say, oh, you didn't fix homelessness in our city, so that's on you. When actually there's lots and lots of players involved in a challenge like that.